They cut me off on my wedding day, while I was standing in my gown, waiting to pay the florist. I was staring at the florist's iPad, my fingers trembling. Declined. Again. All 3 cards, declined. My heart was pounding louder than the wedding drums inside the venue. My parents had blocked my accounts. No warning. No explanation. Just cold silence and empty bank balances. Before we go on, if this moment hit you like it hit me, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this story. You won't believe what I did next. I looked at my mother, standing by the fountain in her designer gown, sipping champagne like she hadn't just financially ambushed her only daughter. My dad stood next to her, grinning like he'd won some kind of power game. I walked up to them, my veil trailing behind me like a ghost of trust, and asked, "Why?" Dad shrugged. "You chose to marry Ethan. We told you we don't approve of him. Actions have consequences, Aria." Mom chimed in, "It's time you learned that money doesn't come without obedience." Obedience. That word hit me like a slap. They weren't punishing Ethan. They were punishing me, for not bending, for not marrying the man they had picked, some rich doctor I barely liked. They'd invited 300 guests. Spent thousands on the venue, food, and decorations. But all of it, I realized now, was conditional. A show of generosity with strings attached. I wasn't a daughter to them, I was a transaction they thought they could cancel last minute. What they didn't know was I had a plan B. For the past 6 years, I'd been quietly building something. In between classes, internships, and working 2 jobs, I'd been investing, learning crypto, real estate flips, and something they'd always mocked, digital businesses. I never flaunted it. Never showed off. Not even to Ethan. I wanted to prove it to myself first, but that day, standing in the middle of the wedding chaos, publicly humiliated, I realized something. They wanted a war. They were about to get a silent one. And the first step? Pulling back. Every single dollar from the very thing they cared about the most, their retirement fund. I didn't cry. Not in front of them. Not while the cameras flashed and guests wandered by, confused by the tension in the air. I simply turned away, walked back into the venue, and whispered to Ethan, "Change of plan. We're paying ourselves." He looked confused. "With what? Your parents were covering everything." I gave him a tight smile. "Not anymore. But trust me, I've got it." What my parents didn't know was that 2 months ago, after another one of their manipulative outbursts, I quietly hired a financial advisor. Together, we'd restructured my inheritance, something I'd received from my late grandmother and was legally separate from my parents' holdings. But here's the twist. Years ago, when my dad had begged me to help with a tax shelter plan, I had, unknowingly, set up a retirement trust fund for them under my legal control. They forgot one detail. I still had access. So while they thought they were punishing me, they didn't know they were standing on a platform I built. During the reception, as the guests danced and toasted to our future, I slipped into the bridal suite, opened my laptop, and logged in. 1 click. 2 verifications. And just like that, access revoked. I transferred the entire fund, every penny of their retirement trust, into a frozen status. They couldn't withdraw, transfer, or touch a cent. Not until a formal court hearing and back on the dance floor, my mother raised her glass. "To Aria and Ethan. May you learn responsibility." I stepped up to the mic. "Actually," I said, my voice calm but electric, "a toast sounds good. To parents who raised me to be strong, but forgot that strength works both ways." The room fell silent. My father tilted his head. "What's that supposed to mean?" I leaned in, smiled sweetly, and whispered loud enough for the front tables to hear, "Check your retirement account." His face turned pale. My mother's hand froze midair, holding her champagne flute like it suddenly weighed 50 pounds. They had no idea what I had done, but they were about to find out. Panic doesn't look like screaming, it looks like silence. My father just stood there, gripping his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. My mother was scrolling furiously, trying to refresh her app like the numbers would magically reappear, but they wouldn't, because I made sure of it. They'd always treated me like I was soft, emotional, easy to bend. But what they never saw was the version of me who stayed up past midnight learning legal loopholes. Who built businesses under a different LLC name so no one would suspect. Who invested in AI tools, affiliate marketing, and digital licensing deals they said were a waste of time. All those hours they mocked me for being on my laptop, they paid for this moment. My cousin Jake, Dad's golden boy, stepped in, smug as ever. Aria, this is childish. You froze their entire retirement? Over some credit cards? I turned slowly. No, Hake. I froze their retirement because for the first time in my life, I realized I was the one funding their future, and they were trying to destroy mine. He opened his mouth to argue, but Ethan stepped beside me. They humiliated her today. You all watched it. Nobody stepped in. But now that she's standing up for herself, suddenly she's the problem. The room split in two, half stunned, half awkwardly sipping their drinks. Aunt Linda mumbled, "She's just angry." "Damn right I am," I said. "But I'm not out of control. I'm finally in control." Then I looked right at my parents. "You wanted to teach me a lesson? Here it is, never play chess with someone who's already moved 10 steps ahead." My mom whispered, "You wouldn't do this to your own family." I stared back. Family doesn't ambush their daughter on her wedding day and expect loyalty in return. They didn't respond. The DJ, unsure what to do, slowly turned the music back on. The party resumed, but the energy had changed. People kept sneaking glances at my parents, whispering. The power shift was complete, but I wasn't done yet, because they still had one last surprise coming, something they'd never expect. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop, texts from family, friends, even distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Half of them were shocked. The other half were quietly cheering me on, but the real message came through at exactly 8:17 a.m. A formal notice from the attorney managing the trust fund, retirement access frozen. Beneficiary funds pending reassessment. Immediate legal counsel. Advised. I knew my parents had probably been on the phone with lawyers all night. But it was too late. Every loophole had already been closed, by me. Months ago, they just didn't realize I'd stopped playing the role of the obedient daughter. A long time ago, Ethan walked in with coffee. "So, are we officially the most controversial newlyweds in the country?" I smirked. "We might be. But we're also debt-free, funded, and in control." See, what I hadn't told anyone, not even Ethan until last night, was the real source of my success. While my parents were trying to push me into medicine or law, I quietly built a passive income empire, digital storefronts, anonymous blog networks, niche product licensing, and a business that was now pulling in 6 figures every month. I bought the wedding venue myself. I even prepaid for a 2-month honeymoon, under a shell company they didn't know existed, and the final nail in the coffin, I just finalized a real estate deal on their favorite vacation home in Florida. The one they thought belonged to their friend? I'd bought it under a private trust. Their friend was my business partner. Ethan's eyes widened when I told him. "You bought their vacation house?" "Technically," I said, sipping my coffee, "we own it now." Just then, an email came through from Dad. Subject: "You've made your point. Let's talk." I didn't respond, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about freedom, and they were finally beginning to understand what it felt like to lose control, but even they had no clue what was about to happen next, because I had just scheduled something they wouldn't be able to ignore. 1 week later, my parents walked into a financial advisor's office expecting to negotiate. What they got instead was a presentation. On the screen, a full breakdown of every trust, account, asset, and holding I'd legally gained control over the past 3 years. My dad's face dropped when he saw the list of shell corporations. My mom gasped when she saw the vacation home title, signed under my initials. The advisor looked at them and said, "Mr. and Mrs. Clark, your daughter didn't just freeze your retirement, she owns your retirement." There was no yelling. No drama. Just quiet horror, because they finally understood. I didn't just react. I planned, and the most ironic part, I wasn't trying to hurt them. In fact, for years, all I wanted was a little independence, a little respect. But they played control games, used money as a leash, and turned love into a contract. So I rewrote the contract, and now, they were at the mercy of the daughter they tried to sabotage. I offered them one option, a monthly stipend from their fund, managed by my financial team. Enough to live comfortably. But no luxuries. No random spending. No power plays. They signed it, with shaking hands. Back at home, Ethan and I sat on the balcony, overlooking the ocean from the same vacation home they used to brag about to their friends. It was quiet. Peaceful. Free. Ethan said, "You really did all this," quietly, patiently, like a storm waiting to hit. I looked at him and smiled. Storms don't make noise until they land. I just made sure mine landed exactly where it needed to. And in that moment, I didn't feel bitter. I felt whole, not because I got revenge, but because I reclaimed my voice, my freedom, and my future, and the girl they once mocked, she became the woman they never saw coming.